Welcome to Evolving with Every Step, your safe space for unearthing life's lessons. We're your sisters, Ashley and Brittany, and together we will explore the depths of life's experiences.
We will discuss the growth and expansion that comes when we get curious around what these experiences can teach us. So take a seat, join the conversation, and let's evolve with every step we take. We are so happy you're here. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our third episode of Evolving with Every Step. We have a big topic today. We are going to be talking about gaslighting. Now, before we dive into this topic, we do need to disclose to our listeners, we are not mental health professionals. This podcast is in no way to replace therapy and or any medical intervention you may need. We also aren't coming into this as experts. We don't have it all figured out. We are coming into this space, though, as students of life alongside you. And when you're a student of life, this means the lessons never stop rolling in, and we're always going to continue to learn and grow each day. So to kick us off for our listeners, Brittany, can you provide a definition to those who maybe aren't as familiar what gaslighting is?
Absolutely. So, the American Psychology Association defines gaslighting as manipulating another person into doubting their own experiences, perceptions, and understanding of events. I still think this is a weird word to use for this form of manipulation, so I wanted to dig a little bit more into where the term gaslighting came from. Do you have any idea where this came from, Ash?
I do not. Lay it on me.
Okay, so from the website woventraumatherapy.com, the term gaslighting originates from a British play turned into a film in the 1930s. The play was called Gaslight. And the whole plot of this film is that this man started mentally and emotionally manipulating his wife into believing she was crazy by changing the intensity of the gas lamps in their home. So by changing the intensity of the gas lamps, the lights would flicker either stronger or dimmer. And she's home alone, thinking that nobody else is there adjusting this. And she's starting to lose trust in herself of, did I change that light? I don't know. Maybe I did. And then he starts adding on to this by creating noises in the walls and voices and everything, where he's denying her that she's experiencing this, where it eventually turns her into mental insanity. Isn't that crazy?
It is wild.
Yes. So now that we know that the phrase gaslighting and where it came from is that somebody denying your experiences and your emotions, I think we can all relate to this in some way. You may have been in a relationship in some capacity. It doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. It could be family members, could be coworkers, could be friends, where somebody has done this to you, where it now has programmed this behavior even towards yourself.
Yes. And so when I'll run through some of the different ways where we're going to talk about gaslighting. And something I want to keep in mind here is you may have had an experience, like Brittany said, where someone has denied your experiences and manipulated you in a way to not trust yourself and what you're experiencing. But I also want to talk about how we do it to ourselves. And maybe you weren't conditioned because you were in an abusive relationship. It can come from so many other habits, especially if you're a big people pleaser, which I know something I struggle with. So we're going to look at what's that experience like from an abusive relationship perspective. We're also going to look at it from the people-pleasing perspective. So how are you denying yourself your feelings and your experiences because you're trying to, and I'm doing quotation marks for those of you that can't see me, to keep the peace or to make sure people don't feel uncomfortable around you, and you're denying yourself of who you are, and you've got to dim your light so that certain people don't feel, intimidated or bad about themselves around you. And I'm not talking about being a rude person or a blunt person. It's not nice to show up always around that. But if you feel like you can't be who your authentic self is because certain people will feel intimidated by it, you're essentially gaslighting what you need to be yourself to be in that situation. So before we start diving into our experiences, just some examples of how this was starting to show up in my life anyways. And I will tell you that when it was showing up, I didn't even know that this is what I was doing until I started doing therapy and my therapist was saying, whoa, why are you doing this to yourself? So some things I was experiencing into my adult years were things like denying myself of what I was experiencing and not acknowledging that I was unhappy in those situations. So whether it was in certain relationships, whether it was a situation I was in, it could be in work, it could be anything. It was something that didn't align with me and I was not happy with. But the narrative in my head and how I talked to myself was, you're weak, you're overreacting, you're being a spoiled brat, you're not a hard worker. I basically, anytime I was unhappy in a situation, there was that part of me that I would want to say is my authentic self saying, hey, something isn't right. And then there was this other voice that was conditioned in me to tell me that what you're feeling is not real and you are overreacting. To get started with us, a lot of this programming began when we were kids and through the abuse we experienced growing up. And Brittany, I think you had a really good explanation around this. So would you like to kick that off?
My very first memory of being gaslighted by somebody was when I was a young teenager. Like, I haven't even been through high school yet. I think I'm in like my last years of elementary school. And it was around the time that dad was heavily drinking. And you've already tried to talk to him about it. Mom tried to talk to him about it. And he was just not having that conversation with you guys. So I was home alone with him one day and I decided it was my turn to try because me and dad had like a special relationship. I was like dad's little girl. So I remember sitting in his bedroom saying, I need to talk to you about something that's important. And I tried to address it with him. And he blew up on me. He said, like, you have no idea what I've been going through. How dare you say that there's something wrong with me? All I do is do so much for this family, and you have to come up here and tell me that I'm doing something wrong. You have no say in my actions. And he didn't talk to me for weeks after that. I'm like 12, 13 years old, so vulnerable.
Getting the silent treatment from a parent.
Getting the silent treatment from a grown man who's supposed to be my protector and father. And I think that was the last time I ever addressed anything with him. And then I'm leaving the conversation feeling like crap because I made him feel bad. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking I did something wrong when what I was doing was out of an act of love. I was hoping by the youngest person in the family coming to him to have this conversation that he may actually listen a little bit more. So that was the first incident where I remember being gaslit, and it just got worse from there, where I would hear arguments between you and him, where then I just decided to not approach anything to keep the peace. And this is that topic we're thinking of, like just being people pleasers and keeping the peace by denying your emotions and addressing them with the person you're in conflict with. And then as things, again, just kept getting worse as we were growing up, we had to go out into the world, high school, like still elementary school, into high school, into university, pretending everything was fine. We had to go out into the world with a smile on our face, knowing when we come home, we don't know what behavior we're coming home to the point where you start to believe that everything is okay when it really is not. And I became desensitized to this pain that we were experiencing at home. And I didn't realize how bad it was until once we were out and we started talking to people about it and seeing their reactions to it. And people being, how did you get through that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just did. I didn't realize it was that bad. And it wasn't until we were out of it. And even when we were out of it, I was so programmed to thinking that my emotions were wrong because people would get mad at me if I expressed my emotions, that I would keep them bottled up. And I remember one argument, also very viscerally, when we were living together in Toronto, where I had been bottling up these negative emotions for so long. And I go to grab a snack and the peanut butter jar was empty and I blew up. Like, I full on had a fit and was crying about the peanut butter being gone and you not telling me, or you eating the last of it. I don't know what it was, but I just remember this very inappropriate reaction to the peanut butter. And we had gone through enough therapy at that point where you said, I don't think this is about the peanut butter. And we sat down and we unboxed all of this stuff that I was penting up inside, just like verbal diarrhea. Mm-hmm. And through it from there. And that's been my experience of just denying my emotions, keeping quiet to keep the peace. So that was a lot. That was a lot right there.
Yeah. But hoping to go away. Like, I hope it was a cathartic. Do you feel a little?
It does feel cathartic.
Okay.
And
all right.
I'm
Well,
hoping...
it's my turn then. I want to feel.
Okay. No, Ash, now tell us your experience where you remember this starting and how you felt throughout that.
You know what? I can't pinpoint the very first time. And I think it's only because, like you mentioned, we had different approaches. You and mom are very similar. You're very gentle people, and you guys won't, I don't know how to describe it. Like you said before, if I felt something was unjust, I would go toe to toe with that person, where you guys would take kind of like a softer approach. And so because of that, dad understood the different personalities. And as he got more and more into his drinking and became more toxic and more angry, he was looking for a place to take out that anger. And he knew how to trigger me. Of course. And I mean, I'm like 13, 14, 15, 16, I don't care how old you are into your teen years. I was not equipped to know that you don't argue with someone who's drinking.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And the problem is he would drink all throughout the day. So it'd be like 3 p.m. Am I aware that he's drunk at that point? No, because he had been drinking so much that you would consider him to be a high functioning alcoholic at that point.
Yeah.
So not only would I would get in trouble for something like if I closed the cupboard door too loud, I was grounded. And then I'd fight with him about it. And, he would start arguments with me and I would fight back because I'd think, no, you don't. This is not fair. This is not right. I'm standing up for myself. And so then it got really bad. Like he would compare me to the people in his family that he openly would say he hated. He would put his finger in my face and tell me at like 13 that I was a bitch. I would, when I got older and we'd come back from university and I was just home, he would say things like, there's never any drama around here till you're around. Like it was always my fault that there was something wrong in the house. And as much as I'm someone that will go toe to toe if I don't think something's right, I'm also someone that I hate if I feel like there's any animosity between me and someone else. I want to make it right. And I'm someone like, let's make this right now. Let's talk it out, make it better. And so I know I had several times where dad and I would fight, and it'd be silly, stupid things he'd start with fights over. But I'm like, okay, it's like Christmas in 2 days. I don't want us to all be upset on Christmas. So let me make this better, right? I'm like 15. How do I make this better? And I go to talk to him about it, and he would, man, I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't say he was a narcissist. I can say he definitely started portraying narcissistic behaviors. And anyone who's had arguments or conversations, it feels like you've been mind warped. You walk in, you're talking in circles. By the end of it, nothing's resolved and you feel like a piece of shit. Like it's like you walked in worried, I don't like how this happened. Let's talk it out. And it's the same thing. You have no right to be upset. You are such a spoiled brat. I worked so hard for all these things and then X, Y, and Z happened to me. You don't know pain unless you've been through what I've been through. How dare you? And like you said, you walk out and you're like, oh my God, I'm so horrible. And so when someone straight up tells you you have no right to feel a certain way so many times, and when someone is constantly telling you that you are the reason why there's problems in the house, that they can't wait till you move out because then it's going to be so much nicer at home. You're called a bitch. You're told that you're just, I basically grew up believing I was no good. So what would happen is when I was in situations where I felt like I wasn't being treated right, or I felt like I was wrong in certain situations, the narrative in my head was you're a spoiled brat and you're overreacting and you are a burden because all you do is cause drama. So this is all on you. And so it really is just, and man, we'll have a whole other topic on what it's like to be in an abusive situation. But the worst part about this that happens with this kind of gaslighting is you completely lose yourself and you don't know who you are. your true self is in there, that spirit is inside you and it is telling you something's wrong, but you have this other programming in your brain shutting it down every time. And so you start to learn that when you're in situations, you can't trust how you feel. So you stay in situations that don't align with you. You're miserable. And
Yeah.
it's not until you can get out of that situation and start learning about yourself that you can start to trust your emotions again. And I'm going to tell and be honest with everyone now, I'm still not there.
Yeah,
I've
same
been
here.
through 10 years of therapy. I actively work on this every single day. Because my automatic reaction when something happens, and because we've been exposed to such extreme reactions and behaviors from not just dad, but other people in the family, we get a little desensitized when something has happened that's not right. And so what ends up happening to me now is I'm like, all right, let that roll off my back. But
Yeah.
it festers. And then here I am 2 weeks later, and I'm realizing that wasn't right. And I don't feel good about that. And I have to be grateful that I'm at a point that I can recognize it now. Before I just never would, and I would keep putting up with it. But if you're someone who's coming out of that situation and you're having a hard time trusting yourself, it does get better. It takes a lot of time. And there is another piece to the puzzle here I do want to add because it helps loop in the people-pleasing piece really well. And this might be behavior that you learned growing up as well. And so I want to talk on the flip side with our mom. She is the sweetest person you're ever going to meet. And she's doing so much better now. And I'm so proud of her. She's had a really big people-pleasing problem. And so even before things started to flip around with our dad, we grew up watching our mother constantly sacrifice her own happiness and her needs for other people. And I'm not talking about the classic, you're a mother, so you're going to make sure that your kids are fed first before you are, or whatever it is that, it's expected of moms. I'm talking about people within the family would call her up or friends or anyone, and they would just be unhappy because maybe she didn't keep in touch with them enough, or they were upset just about something and they would explode on her. I remember being as young as 7 years old and mom crying after she got off the phone with someone. And she never stood up for herself. And I remember her big thing was keeping the peace. She didn't want to upset anyone, so let's keep the peace.
Yeah.
So I kind of got trained in this thinking that, because I always looked at mom as she was such a nice person and such a kind person and everyone loved her. So I thought, this is what you do when you're nice. A nice person takes it and keeps the peace. And I used to think that was being the taking the high road, but that's not taking the high road.
No.
That is gaslighting yourself. It's you denying what you need. It's denying how you feel for the sake of making sure other people are happy with you. So we had it from two different perspectives. And I think there's people out there who are people pleasers and who have also just will deny how they feel for the sake of what I say, keeping the peace.
So now that we've gotten to the many different ways that we can experience and that we have experienced gaslighting, what are some things that we are doing now to help us work through those instances where we're recognizing it happening to us or we're doing it to ourselves? So Ash, do you want to give some examples of what's in your practice? What have you done to help you work through gaslighting?
So a big part, as I talked about before, when you go through gaslighting is you really learn to not trust yourself. And so I often found growing up and even in my early adult years, I was constantly trying to mirror other people I saw and what they were into, what they were doing to hopefully try to find my own happiness. And I had to start to step away from trying to find that approval, or I guess what I'm saying is I had to find a way to rebuild the relationship with myself. I had to learn who I was, and it's not an easy thing to do. I felt like I was just a compilation of everyone else around me and everything I saw on social media. I didn't feel like myself. And so a big practice for me was, I mean, my faith has always been huge. I believe in God, and I prayed, and that was huge for me. But I really dived deep into my spiritual practice. I got very into things that were going to connect me in and get quiet with myself. So things like yoga, meditation. God, there's so much yoga and guided meditations on YouTube for free. You can do them. Journaling's also a really good thing as well. For those overthinkers like myself, when your brain, I can think of 1 million things at the same time. Journaling and writing it down can really help you sort through your thoughts. But one thing I do want to call out, because this is something I've had to learn to do, is when I'm experiencing something that upsets me, I work, because before what I would do is just push it off and keep going, which I want to say, just as a disclosure, that was a huge survival mechanism for the both of us. Because
Yeah.
if we were to fully feel all the trauma we were going through growing up, it would have been too much.
Yeah.
But denying your feelings and pushing it off, that's not serving us now. So what I had to start doing, and it literally took me up into just a couple years ago. I'm almost 33. So it literally took me until my 30s before I learned that when I experienced something I didn't like, let's take a minute and hold space for myself and this feeling. Why do I feel this way? And I'd look at it and say, okay, is my reaction, is this an appropriate reaction to what I'm experiencing? If the answer is yes, it's like, okay, how am I going to handle it? If my response is not appropriate, I then, instead of saying, you're overreacting, all of that, I don't say that to myself. I say, okay, what part of me is not healed that this is triggering? And you've got to do a lot of self-analyzing and get really comfortable at knowing yourself so you can figure that out. And there are so many times where I get triggered by the silliest things. And it is silly, like, just let it roll off your back, right? You think, let's just roll it off your back or stand up for yourself. And I don't. And I realize it's because it's triggering that part of my childhood where I was, we grew up where we were always put down and trying to be controlled. And so when you realize that's what's happening, then it's like, okay, how can I nurture that part of myself so I can heal?
Wow, that's powerful. I would say I have some similar methods as you. After realizing in therapy what I was doing to myself and what I had experienced by denying my emotions, I did have to get super uncomfortable. Like, it feels icky to sit with those negative emotions. Sit with them and ask myself the exact same questions that you said. Is this an appropriate reaction for what is happening right now? It's like you have that flow chart, right? Is this an appropriate reaction? Yes. Okay, how are we going to work through it? No. Where is this coming from? How are we going to work through it? It all comes through how do we work through it? How do we heal that part of ourselves? Or how do we address that negative emotion and situation? And sometimes, like, things for me, if it was a reaction towards one of you guys, like you, Mom, Ollie, like if it was something that you guys did, I go through that flow chart. And sometimes it's me just actually having to talk it out and say, I actually don't know if this is an appropriate reaction, but I need you to know where this hurt is coming from. And I found this was actually super powerful. And what has made my healing was that after we moved out, I moved in with Ollie. I'm realizing, you're my sister. Sisters are going to fight. But then the same thing was happening moving in with my, at the time, boyfriend. I cannot be blowing up on my boyfriend if I want this relationship to work moving in together. So I would let myself sit with the emotion, and then I would approach him and say, hey, you know what? You did X, Y, Z. It wasn't the right behavior. I want you to know that, like, I did have this overreaction. It came from this, but really I am hurt by what you did as well. And having that open communication and realizing with whoever you're in that communication with, I recognize my reaction wasn't appropriate, but I do need you to know where it stems from and that we do need to change this moving forward. And that's a really great way to work through it with a partner or somebody that you trust. Sometimes you're not in that situation where you can sit down with the person and have that conversation, where then you kind of need to dig deeper on your own, meditate on those thoughts and figure out how do you approach the conversation with them to correct their behavior as well in a way that's in a loving, non-accusative way. because they might not even be aware of what they're doing.
And that was a huge breakthrough on your side because, like we said before, growing up, I was always very vocal. I always used my voice where you, in order to protect yourself, it's like if there was a fight or flight character, I was the fight and you were the flight. Like you you just shrunk as like small as you could and hid away and didn't say how you felt. So that is such a huge, huge thing for you. And the big thing for me in all of this, because, and this goes both ways. Like what we're talking about here is we know that our reaction, there's a reason for it, but it's not an excuse for it.
Yes.
And this is where we also need to get very clear with when you're in a situation where, especially if people are gaslighting you, and like we had growing up, where the excuse for it was because they've been through so much in their life and they've experienced so much hurt. And that's why I get to act like this entitlement because of that. And here's the thing. We are all responsible for how we respond to things. It can be a reason for why you're like that, but it is never an excuse. We all have the tools we need to start working on it. And let me tell you, when you start owning that for yourself, you are very unlikely to start accepting that behavior from other people.
I'm seeing parents on social media right now help toddlers work through tantrums, go through breathing exercises. So if a toddler can control their emotions, identify what they're feeling, and come down from that, a grown adult should be able to do the same thing. You are not without resources.
Someone's going to feel attacked by that one.
This is going to hurt. This is going to hurt to a lot of people, but that just means that we've hit a chord with you. That if somebody as small that has had very little life experience can work through their emotions, you should be able to do that 100 times over. And it's not to be accusatory. It is not to make you feel bad about yourself. This is us just giving the tough love of here's something that you can start working towards now.
100%. And oh man, I feel that is just, it's such a game changer. And when you start owning your own reactions to things, let me tell you, it's easier not to, right? Because you don't have to dig through the tough stuff. And it's easier to just blame other people. But when I tell you the actual freedom and liberation you feel when you can say, yeah, I'm not going to react that way. I understand why it's triggering me. I'm going to work through it. Maybe I got to talk to them. Maybe it's something on my side that has nothing to do with them. It is so freeing. But it's also freeing in the opposite way, in that, especially if you're with someone, people maybe you don't know as well, it can be more difficult when it's someone you're close with. But you then are going to start to recognize that so many people respond to things in life out of their own emotional baggage.
Yes.
And you're going to start to take how other people in the world act way less personally.
Absolutely. Oh, that is so freeing to not be reactive. I feel like I have a superpower in a way. Like we haven't mastered this, as we said, but I do feel like I have a superpower where I don't let my emotions control me. And it's something else that we should just implant in the listeners' minds. Emotions don't equal truth. When you break down how we said that little flow chart of like, is this a valid reaction? Yes, no. Because you feel that way, our emotions don't mean that it is the truth of what is actually happening in front of you. And I think that was another breakthrough for me as well.
Yeah, it's so true. It's that saying of where it's like, there's your side, their side, and then the truth. You know, like everyone takes in their experiences through the lens of their emotional baggage and their limiting beliefs. And so it's really important that you take the time to understand what those limiting beliefs and that emotional baggage is. Because as you start to work through it, less of life is going to get filtered through that crap. And you're going to start, like you said, it feels like a superpower. Because even when you're getting triggered and you could say, I know what it's triggering. Let me work through it. Let me feel it. Because here's the thing, when you're in a situation where you've been gaslit, what's happening is you've not been provided something that you need. So little Ashley and Brittany as children were not provided a safe space to feel through those emotions and have them acknowledged. And so what's so important for me now is that I have that inner child still within me. who acts up, I got to be that person. I got to show up for her. I got to be like, I'm here. You're safe. We're going to work through this. It's going to be okay. You've got to start showing more love for yourself. You got to start showing up for yourself. And I understand that when you have been in a situation where someone's denied you of your emotions and your experiences, you are tapped out on all of that because you give it all to the other person.
Yeah.
But I want you to know that if you are in a situation where someone tells you you will achieve nothing without them, that they deny your emotions because they've been through so much more than you, where you feel like you're being taken down. If you're ever in a relationship where you are made to feel unworthy at all, that is not a healthy place to be.
That is not love.
No.
And if you feel like your energy is being drained by their presence as well, that is not love. That is not a loving, nurturing relationship. Once you experience a loving, nurturing relationship, the glass is shattered on past relationships that you've had where you did not get what you needed out of it. But first, you got to work on that relationship with yourself. If you're going to look for healthy relationships, you need to start with you because you're around yourself 24/7. You can't escape yourself. You need to be, as Ashley said, be kind to that inner child that was denied the experiences of emotions and trust, and nurture it so you can now trust in your own decisions and the people you bring into your life and the experiences that you have.
And for those that, and even not your inner child, because maybe you're experiencing this as an adult right now in other relationships, who does that person need? And be that person for yourself. And I also want to call out that sometimes, as we said, the people pleasing side, sometimes you haven't been through technically an abusive situation, but maybe you're someone that is a bit more easygoing. And what we tend to find is people who have more dominant personalities and the louder person in the room, they tend to get their way because people just don't want to deal with that uncomfortableness.
They don't push back.
They don't. And you need to, I want you to know that just because if you want something, and look, we're talking like it's important to compromise. I'm not saying you should always get your way. But if you're constantly denying the things that you want and that you need because the other person blows up or seems to care more, and we think, wow, they really care about this, so I can just give up what I need because that's clearly more important to them. If you keep doing that, you are gaslighting yourself and you are conditioning the other person to think that it's okay. So I feel like this is a good place to tie up this podcast. And there's just a couple things I just want to say. I want you, those that are listening, I want you to know that you should never feel unworthy. You should never feel like you're no good. You should never feel like you're a burden. And I think that we all have to take time to understand the flaws in ourselves that are unhealthy behaviors. Like we said, do that flow chart, understand where your reactions are not, they're excessive to what is happening. But please don't believe anybody that's telling you you are unworthy or no good. That's what I want you to know. And if this can just help one person to recognize that they're in an unhealthy situation, I want you to understand that you're going to doubt every ounce of your being when you step out of it.
Yeah.
Don't wait till you have confidence leave because you're never going to get it. It's never going to come. You just got to know what's healthy, what's not, and step out. And then you need to get therapy. You need to stick with it because every day you're out of it, the more you're going to look at it and think, how the hell did I ever stay in that?
Yeah. Oh boy, did we feel that. And find your support group too, your cheerleaders. If you don't have friends or family, there are support groups out there that will help you and will get you through it. Never, ever believe, as Ashley said, that you are unworthy and that you are no good because you are not put on this earth for that reason.
I really hope this helps someone recognize that and know that there will be a time when you step away from it, you are eventually going to realize how beautiful of a person and how worthy of love you are.
Oh, that's beautiful, Ash. I think that's a great place to leave this. So in summation, we know what gaslighting is. It is when somebody can deny you of your own experience, your own truth, in your emotions of what you're going through right now. And we also learn that this is something that you can actually be doing to yourself as well and not even realize. Some ways that we can work through gaslighting are creating that flow chart that we talked about, and we will post a picture of this on our Instagram. What is the reaction that I'm having right now? Is it a valid reaction to have to this situation? If yes, how are we going to work through this? If no, what triggered the response? And how do we heal that so we can move forward? No matter yes or no, there is going to be work involved so you can start building trust in yourself and your emotions again. Next, if you do feel like you are in a relationship where you're being gaslit, turn to your trusted support group, friends, family, whoever it might be, to get their opinion on the situation. If you're afraid to go to them because you don't want to tarnish this person's reputation, or you're afraid they may have a negative opinion about this person, that may be your first red flag right there. And on top of that, definitely seek professional help to help you work through how to navigate through this relationship so you can build trust in yourself and what your experiences are, find your truth again to move forward. We definitely found solace in seeking that professional help to help us rebuild our relationships with ourselves again, because now we need to rebuild who we are to ourselves.
Yes. And that flow chart that Brittany mentioned, I do want to say that is a more advanced technique. And that's something we're able to do after years of therapy. And sometimes it's really, really important to get third-party perspective who has no emotional investment in your life, because they're going to give you clear-cut perspective into what you're experiencing. So I say, above all else, if you have access to therapy, I would definitely do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It was a heavy one, and I'm just so happy that you joined us and listened to our experience. And I really hope that there's one thing or two things you can take away from this. We do hope you found value in this conversation and feel inspired to embrace your own discovery of how you can listen more into your intuition and into your own emotions.
Yes. And don't forget to join us on our next episode, where we'll continue to explore and evolve together. If you enjoyed today's discussion or feel like somebody else can really benefit from today's discussion, please subscribe and share with a friend. And you can follow us on social media at Instagram and TikTok at Evolving with Every Step for more insights and behind-the-scenes content.
And until next time, remember to embrace every experience with curiosity so you can evolve with every step. And we'll see you in our next episode.
Bye.